Hello and welcome. This is Daniel Lawrence Smith, Associate Director of Training at Out and Equal Workplace Advocates. This is our March 2016 monthly town call, Go GLOCAL, Adapting Your ERG to Accommodate Growth and Success. A reminder that this is a broadcast audio call, so turn up the volume on your headsets or speakers. And if you're having trouble accessing the volume, you can go ahead and join us by dialing in as well. This session will be recorded and available as a digital archive afterward. A few announcements here at Out and Equal. April 14th is the deadline to submit workshop proposals for the 2016 Out and Equal Workplace Summit. We will have a global town call with perspectives on Eastern Europe on April 27th. And we hope that you will join us on April 28th for our monthly town call on unconscious bias with an LGBT perspective. Coming up in May is our three-part Train the Trainer webinar series for those of you interested in becoming Out and Equal certified trainers and bringing our training resources back to your workplace and community. May 26th will be our monthly town call, Mentoring, the Next Step to Success. And our June monthly town call will be Governance Model and Executive Sponsors, Keys to a Successful BRG. And of course, October 4th through 7th will be our 2016 Out and Equal Workplace Summit in Orlando, Florida. A reminder that our Leadership Day will be on Tuesday, October 4th. We want to call attention to the fact that today, March 31st, is Transgender Day of Visibility. And Transgender Day of Visibility is a day to show your support for the trans community. It aims to bring attention to the accomplishments of transgender people around the globe by spreading knowledge of the trans community. Unlike Transgender Day of Remembrance, this is a day not for mourning, but a day of empowerment and recognition. And we have some images there of our Transgender Advisory Committee, which we are so fortunate to have working with Out and Equal. Also, two images of Janet Mock and Dr. Vivian Ming, both of who delivered keynotes at previous Out and Equal Workplace Summits, and we were so fortunate to have them join us. You can use the hashtag #TransDayOfVisibility. With that, I'd like to jump right into our panel, and I will allow Jason and Lisa to take it from here.
Awesome. Good luck, Lisa. And Daniel, I know you can help her out on the chat. Hey, everyone, it's Jason Patria. I'm coming to you from Universal Studios in Los Angeles, California. I'm proud to be the Executive Director of Talent Development and the Talent Lab here at NBC Universal, which is our commitment to educating our talent and our workforce to become the most strategic and well-informed workforce in all of media and technology. I'm also proud to be the global chair of Out at NBC Universal, our LGBT and straight ally employee resource group. I've been with the company for just under 24 years, and I've been proud to work with Out at NBC Universal for the past decade. Lisa, are you still on the line where you can give us a quick intro before we jump in?
Yes, I am. This is Lisa Rhodes calling from Collegeville outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm a senior technologist with the Dow Chemical Company. So in stark contrast to Jason's glitzy LA location, I find myself in goggles and a lab coat, but I am proud to be at a company that really embraces LGBT diversity.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. So I know you're jumping in. We want to welcome all of you to the call. We were really excited to be asked by Out and Equal to present this. Lisa and I and some of our fellow coworkers at Dow and NBC Universal had the chance to present back in Dallas at the Out and Equal Summit in October, and we had an amazing time. So what we've done is tried to condense this and make it fun and interactive for you while you are on this virtual session. And we'll take questions at the end, but of course, you know, if you're looking at your screen, you can always use this chat button function, and we'll try our best to take some questions as well. So you're probably asking yourselves why we called this Go GLOCAL, and we spent some time thinking about why we wanted to call it that. And really what we found is both at Dow and NBC Universal, we had found success really growing our employee resource groups, not only in the US, but also overseas from an international international perspective. And the really common thread there was the fact that we were looking at things from a global perspective with a global strategy, but we were providing the opportunity and really the mandate to make sure that we were being hyper local in the execution of our employee resource groups. So our challenge for you, and over the next 45 or so minutes, we'll be talking about tips that you can go global in terms of your employee resource group. But let's go ahead and first jump in by doing a little poll. So if you look up on the screen, you can see this poll. We want to hear from you. What's your role within the company? You can see the list there from training, HR, ERG member down the line. Go ahead and give us those results there, and I see them clicking up on there. We'll go ahead and start putting some results up as you're putting it there. So it looks like we've got lots of folks that are LGBTQA employees. We've got a lot of ERG members. We're also welcomed by a lot of our great partners in the diversity and inclusion field. So thanks for doing that. Let's open up a new poll that's going to help us out. I want to know from you, how many employee resource groups or business resource group chapters does your company have? So some of you have 1 all the way down to 10 plus, or even we don't have any yet. So go ahead and start letting us know there. So it looks like right off the bat, the majority of you have between about 5 and 10, and then there's a pretty good chunk of you that are actually running 10 plus employee resource groups, and a couple of you who have not yet started. So this is really great, as we think most of us on this call are in the business of running multiple ERGs or BRGs across our organizations. So what we figured we'd do before we dive into our tangible sort of skill building elements is we thought we'd share our story with you. So Lisa, are you available to share your story back on?
I am back on, and I can see the slides on the screen, but I can't see what's ahead. So if you want to go to the next slide for me, please, Daniel. I cannot control the slides, but I can see. All right, folks, so I am proudly joining you from the Dow Chemical Company. As you can see, a little bit of history here. The company was founded in the late 1800s. We are headquartered in Midland, Michigan. Not necessarily the most progressive place in the world, but there we are. Fortune 50 company with almost 50,000 employees. We serve a multitude of markets with over 6,000 products. We are a global company with 200 sites in a number of countries around the world, with over 180 countries represented. And you can see there are sales in 2015, we're approaching $50 billion. So next slide, please. So the ERG network here at Dow Chemical for LGBT employees and their ally colleagues is referred to as GLAD. Back in the day, that stood for Gays, Lesbians, and Allies at Dow. And in an effort to be more inclusive of our trans, bi, questioning, of all of our colleagues here at Dow, we have dropped the acronym, and we are just glad to be here. So we are one of 7 employee resource groups at the company. We've been in existence for 16 years now. We have 2,600 participants at over 20 chapters around the world. So we are pleased that we are growing in our emerging countries, and we are not necessarily a North American-centric organization. Next slide, please. So just a brief history. In 1999, Dow's non-discrimination policy officially included sexual orientation. In 2000, the company recognized GLAD as an approved ERG. We were able to extend employee benefits to same-sex domestic partners in 2002. We've included gender identity in a non-discrimination policy. The company is really emphatic about officially including these really core values to the company in our official documentation. We've included transgender benefits for transitional surgery, and have recently been a driver with some of our healthcare providers in hormonal therapies for transitioning teens. We've reinvigorated our presence both in Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And we are celebrating our 15-year anniversary now. Next slide. So as you can see, the GLAD network at Dow has chapters around the globe. We are represented in North America, Europe, Latin America. we have participants in a number of countries where we don't have a formal network. So we are seeing growth in China, we are seeing growth in Saudi Arabia, and we are seeing growth in places that we weren't necessarily expecting a hospitable environment for LGBT inclusion. Next slide.
So Lisa, that's the end of our GLAD slides there. We did have a question that came in to ask if your ERG GLAD was officially, in quotes, approved as an ERG, meaning are you company run and company funded, or are you a separate organization?
Oh, absolutely. And we will get to this a little bit further down the line here when we talk about the roles. But yes, from our inception in 2000, we have been recognized by the corporate structure as an approved and legitimate ERG as a resource for our employees here. Yes, thank you for asking.
Awesome.
And
thanks,
David,
Lisa.
I appreciate your help with the tech, so thank you very much.
No problem. So over at Out at NBC Universal, and I hope that you guys follow us on Facebook at Out NBC Universal and on Twitter at Out NBC Universal, and we always use our hashtag PrideNBCU. I'll try and tweet in just a few minutes. We are proud members of the Comcast Corporation as of 2011. Of course, our businesses go back over 100 years, and many of you know us from television, film, and theme parks, but I'm going to just roll a quick video to give you a great sense of where we are in the LGBT space. So here we go. You might want to turn on the volume at your computer if you're listening.
This is a genuine Watch What Happens Live happening.
Everyone is just who they are, and who they are is just stone cold gay.
I think that I've really brought it in a very gay way. I just love it.
There's a lot more that we have in common with everybody else than we have differences.
It's good news, it's big news.
What a difference.
She was amazing.
I hereby pronounce you a community.
So I know you're all giving us a great round of applause for our fun video. Hopefully you saw some of your favorite LGBT news reporters like Rachel Maddow, and of course all of our friends from the television side like Caitlyn Jenner from I Am Kate. But if you take a look at your screen here, we're really proud to run a business that covers two big buckets of television on the cable side as well as the broadcast side. We're the home to some of your favorite cable networks like USA, E, Sci-Fi, and of course everyone loves Bravo. In the news space, you know us for NBC News and Telemundo Noticias, as well as our cable channels like MSNBC and CNBC there. Of course, we have 29 owned and operated stations across the United States that you probably watch on a regular basis, plus all of our affiliates in other cities. We have a huge sports portfolio. We're the home of the Olympics through 2020. You watch shows on the Golf Channel and NBC Sports Network, and we're the home of two television studios, Cable Productions and Universal Television. Then we've got the film side, you know, Universal Pictures, home of Jurassic World and the Minions, as well as Focus Features that brought you movies like Brokeback Mountain, The Kids Are All Right, and of course, The Danish Girl that just came out late last year. We're the home of Fandango and great Broadway shows like Wicked and Billy Elliot, and we're the home of worldwide theme parks like the Universal Orlando Resort, Universal Studios Hollywood, and Universal Studios Japan and Singapore, and soon Beijing coming in 2019. Just a little bit about us in terms of our LGBT employee resource group. We really date back till about 1986 when a group of journalists at NBC News felt that we weren't covering the HIV and AIDS crisis well, and that was really the first version of Out. At the time it was ANGLE, Association of NBC Gay Lesbian Employees. In the mid-2000s, with the acquisition of Universal, we launched the SoCal chapter, and the past decade has really seen huge growth all the way across the United States to our main headquarter areas, as well as the UK. And then just in the past 6 months and happening this year, we've launched in Asia with a new chapter in Singapore, as well as a chapter that launched for Sydney Mardi Gras out in Australia. Just a couple of key highlights from us. Again, we're one of the oldest LGBT ERGs in media. We were the first major media company to add same-sex domestic partner benefits and add equal opportunity back in 1991. In 2010, CNBC was the first network to go purple all day long for Spirit Day. In 2013, with our new parent company, Comcast Corporation, we scored the HRC 100 with the addition of trans healthcare benefits. And last year, we became the first LGBT group to march in the New York City St. Patrick's Day parade, ending the ban. And many of you have just recently saw that allowed the New York St. Patrick's Day parade to add a second LGBT organization that marched this year. So really proud of making that change. You probably saw some of those images in the video. So in terms of going GLOCAL, and many of you have probably seen this type of model before, but we really thought of using a model that we call GRIPPY. Now, I think that they've sent out to you, or at least after the call, you'll also get a worksheet. So what we're going to walk you through is a worksheet and toolkit that you can use with your employee resource groups as you guide them through this process of sort of going GLOCAL. So if you take a look at your screen,
we just added the PDF in the chat box so folks can download it directly there, and it's also in the email that went out before the call.
Perfect. So if you have that downloaded, you can follow along. If not, you have that entire toolkit to help you out. But just when we look at sort of describing the GRIPPY model for everyone, up at the top, we really have what we look at as goals, and then it cascades to roles, process, and interpersonal or cross-cultural communication. Now, here's the great thing. You can use this. It's commonly used for team building. But in terms of your ERG, the way that I look at it is when you're launching your ERG or spreading your ERG, you really want to look at starting up at the top, defining your goals, then building roles around that process and considering cross-cultural. Now, if you already have multiple chapters and you're trying to re-energize or you're trying to identify what's really going on, what I'd really encourage you is to go at the bottom of the model and say, what are the cross-cultural values that we need to address, and then build backwards going up. So what we're going to do is walk you through each of these different steps and give you some case studies for how we've done them at both Dow Chemical and NBC Universal. So we'll start with goals, and I'm going to ask Lisa to walk you through this. But if you look on your worksheet, it's really about how do you set a compelling vision and mission that works across your entire employee resource group. So think in your mind, if that mission and vision is so narrow to just your singular chapter or your headquarters location, you really want to make sure that it's broad enough that you can launch additional chapters and affiliates. So Lisa, I'm going to throw it over to you to talk about vision and strategic intent at Dow.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. So as you might imagine, in an R&D company with almost 50,000 people, there are a lot of moving parts, and everyone is really encouraged to make sure they're bringing a value. That's, at the end of the day, what's the value to what you're doing. So our GLAD ERG is no exception there. We are aligned almost like a large project in the sense that we have a vision for our network, we have a strategic intent, and we are organized around 3 individual vision elements. So our corporate vision for the network is to foster a safe and inclusive environment that is supportive and open for all employees regardless of their orientation, gender identity, gender expression. Our strategic intent is to make sure the culture here at Dow is open to that the way you present yourself at work in terms of orientation, gender identity, and expression are irrelevant to what you are bringing to the table as an employee. We often use the term, we're bringing our whole selves to work, and that's what's really important for us. And in terms of our GLAD ERG structure, the vision elements that we have focused on are culture change, corporate reputation, and equitable policies and practices. So on our next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
We'll hear how Jason and Al is doing this at NBC Universal.
So when we look at out, and I'm not going to like read through this all the way, but high level, similar to many of your ERGs, we want to be recognized as the top LGBT ERG and the best place to work for people in the media and technology space. And we really have a mission on that day-to-day basis around attracting, developing, and retaining LGBT and ally employees. You can see some of our strategic levers there, but one of the things that you'll notice, and it ties into things later on down the line, is we have a initiative or strategic lever around one company, one out. So we really look at our organization. We do a lot of talk and initiative around acting as one company. So we've cascaded that down to be acting like one out at NBC Universal or one ERG as opposed to fractured ones. So that's certainly something that helps us out. I want to show you a tool, and if you have your worksheet downloaded there, you can see this. I call this the bullseye model. Many of you have probably used this in change management or project management, but really what it describes is when you set your mission and vision at the top, what you want to cascade down to your steering committee and your executive champion and everyone is when you set that vision and mission into place, what is the actual mindset that we all must have in order to execute on that? And when you can think of what that mindset is, I almost think like if you had a USB drive and you could plug it into all of your steering committee members and upload, you know, the 2.0 software, what is that mindset shift that you're really looking to do? And then what that does is it allows you to take a look at what are the specific actions and behaviors that support that mindset, the mission and vision. And when I look over on this side here, what it does is it allows you to take these sort of big picture words that we might stick and put on an employee ID card, right? Like I walk around with vision and mission statements on my ID card. But really what helps your chapters move into action is looking at what are the actual desired changes in terms of how do we want to do more of something? And then in order to put energy to doing more, how do you do less of something? So what I want to walk you through is taking a look at what we did at NBC Universal a few years ago. So we really looked up here with our vision statement. We want to be recognized as top LGBT ERG, best place to work. But here's the really important thing that we had to have a conversation around mindset. And that was we're not a club. We're not a social club. We're an LGBT employees that drive business results. So big mindset shift, getting everyone on board. We are not a club. We are an LGBT employee resource group that drives business results. So what you can see over here is that led us to have great conversations around what we were going to do more of and what we were going to do less of. So I'll just walk you through a couple of those. But for us to reach that mindset in terms of behavior, we had to walk away and say, you know what, we are going to start doing events with purpose. We need to define that every event actually drives back to saying attract, develop, and retain, and we need to justify it that way. And if we're going to get there, we need to do less of doing social events. Now, that was a big thing because, as we know, LGBT employees are very social, but what we said, social for the sake of social doesn't drive business results. Finding a way to drive business results via people feeling social is definitely the place to go. And that allowed us to do consumer activation events, watch parties, doing Super Bowl events at homeless youth shelters, and really bringing all of those elements together, still making them social, but ensuring they had purpose. We also said we wanted to think like a business, and instead, we needed to stop having our own agenda. So what that meant for us is, and I have posted right on my cube here, my desk here, is our strategic levers as an organization from our CEO was constantly asking ourselves from a corporate perspective, what is it that the business needs that LGBT can support? And at individual businesses, where is it that LGBT can support, as opposed to us saying, hey, we want to be in the Pride Parade, who can help us? We would go to a business and say, hey, you're launching a show with Neil Patrick Harris. Wouldn't it be great for us to support you being in an LGBT Pride Parade? We looked at really targeting efforts as opposed to doing one size fits all. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Really going to businesses and offering help and stepping back from being the ERG that's constantly asking asking for everything. Where's this? We want you to sign up for this. We want you to take a stand here. We want you to give money, and really saying, hey, as LGBT employees, how can we help you out? And then probably the biggest thing we looked at was, how do we curate the LGBT experience for employees versus being everything LGBT? So we had almost fallen into this thing. Any LGBT business wanted us to send out a discount code. Everybody wanted us to promote every nonprofit. We really had to say, you know what? People live in cities, people have the internet and Google and local centers and local organizations and communities to help them get connected. We're really here to curate that as it relates to NBC Universal. So really putting filters on, we're not communicating to you unless it really has something to do with LGBT and the business. Right? So those are just some ways that you can use that worksheet. And if you look at that worksheet, you've got that right here for you. So you can actually go through that in an ERG team meeting with you. So we'll jump forward to the roles piece. So once you really have that mindset, that strategy, that vision and mission, it really requires you to kind of wipe the slate clean and say, if we want to do these things, what is the governance structure and the roles that's going to enable success in achieving that? But the big element here is across multiple regions and not just one location. So Lisa, go ahead and take it away and talk about some of the roles at Dow Chemical.
All right, thank you. So as I had mentioned, our GLAD ERG was formed in the year 2000, and it started out as a group of, I believe it was 9 employees who met in somebody's living room to talk about how can they change their workplace culture. Fast forward to 2016, we are a highly organized global organization. One of the keys to our chapter success is to identify a site sponsor. The role of a site sponsor is to support the network at their location. In addition to the site sponsor, we have chapter leaders, co-leaders, and we really try to put a team in place. A step change that we made as an organization in the past couple of years was to tap into our corporate communications team. We had communication liaisons who were willing to help us out, and it was a resource we weren't taking advantage of. So we determined a communications leader to help send a consistent and really effective message on behalf of our network, how we were aligned with our business initiatives, how we were enforcing our workplace culture, where we were in the legal landscape. We had a fantastic, really well-organized message. And once we started to partner with our communications folks and really communicate our value to the company, we saw our network grow almost double in size in about a year. So that was a fantastic leveraging of resources that we had put in place here at Dow. So next slide, please. So in terms of a global structure, the GLAD network has a global steering team. In response to emerging market and international growth, we have added, in the past couple of years, Latin American and European members. We have a strategic plan that we are responsible for aligning to, and then we break down onto a more regional model to meet people where they are and adapt to local culture, politics, laws, practices. So our local framework gives us some flexibility, but it has to align to our global strategy. Next slide. So here's back one, please. Thank you very much. So here's an example of what our network looks like from a, 20,000 feet. This is our global organization. And to answer the earlier question about are we recognized as on the corporate level as an ERG, absolutely. Our global network sponsor is one of the top 3 corporate level executives in the company. So when you have 49,000 people and $50 billion in sales, having your CFO as your executive sponsor for the network speaks volumes. It helps with the budget, but it speaks volumes in terms of corporate support for the network. We have a couple of strategically placed global network advisors. We have ties with HR. We've recently established, and this was really a global outreach on our part, an international outreach position to help us identify locations where we're going to target growth where we don't currently have a chapter location. And as you can see, really top level support for us is our communications and strategy director. We are aligned around those 3 pillars of equitable policies, corporate reputation, and culture change. There are teams in place both within and outside of the United States to help manage local and international policies and respond to situations as they arise. So as you can see here, having both local and global leaders has made a big difference for us. We can go to the next slide. And then this is just, a snapshot of what this might look like on the regional level. We have a United States sponsor. We have a network leader who is an employee who helps coordinate all the local site employees. And this is just a quick snapshot of what our North American chapters look like. Next slide, please. And we've mimicked this successful model from North America. It was working well for us, so we replicated that both in Europe and Latin America. And the effective sponsors in the regions have made a huge impact on us. Our Latin American network sponsor is she is fantastic. Her energy and her support for the network are unparalleled, and as a result from that, we have seen a tremendous increase in our Latin American employees who they self-identify as LGBTQ on employee surveys. So we're up to now 4.2% of our Latin American workforce self-identifying on workplace surveys. And I think a lot of that, the culture in the region has been deeply affected by a fantastic site or a regional sponsor. Next slide, please. I believe this kicks it over to Jason.
Yeah, so in terms of our governance structure, and obviously we're media, so we tend to be a little bit more loosey-goosey, but we've kind of evolved over time. We try to have a monthly or now probably more of a quarterly call, especially as our D&I teams provide a lot more support than they have in the past. But I kind of sit up here as a global chair. We have out executive champions, so this is kind of something new. We've typically had Adam Stotsky, who runs the Esquire network, as a straight ally, who also runs a business. He now runs E and Esquire Network. He runs two businesses where LGBT audience is also critical from a consumer base. He's traditionally been our chair for the past couple of years, but one thing that we've just done in the past 2 weeks is we've added an international executive champion, who is Kevin McClellan, who's an out LGBT executive who runs our international business out of London. So that's a great example as we kind of looked at a priority for 2016 that I apologize I hadn't updated on that slide, was going international. It really made sense to support those international chapters by having a really high-ranking international executive that clearly part of his role is traveling amongst our operating companies internationally. So that's a nice place to look at it. The way we really looked at organizing here was saying that we kind of have some mega chapters. So when we look at Southern California, New York City, London, these are enterprise-wide. We have almost every single one of our businesses operating in that location. So we kind of call those mega hubs because they need to be, our chairs there need to be focused on thinking about enterprise-wide things that touch all employees. Then we looked at more of a regional hub model, single business sites. So now here's the crazy thing. Our Orlando site at Universal Orlando, they have almost 17,000 employees. So they should be a mega hub, but the way we really look at it is they're a regional hub because they have a single set of business priorities that all of those employees are based around. And then when we looked at our other locations that were much smaller, those tended to be single sites of business as television stations where we have a chapter leader there. Now, all of our folks, we all operate in one large sort of steering committee, but based on our goals, what we've done is created these global committees. And the purpose of the global committees is to create product for everyone. So what it allows is sort of at these mega hubs, we have designers, social media people, creative people, people with production skills that maybe don't exist at some of these smaller regional sites. By having a global social media and communications group, by having global committees that create the entire June is Pride Month package or Spirit Day in October package, everyone gets professional materials and assets that are sent out to them. So we found a lot of benefit from doing that. So if you take a look at your worksheet, I think the big element here is it's not like there's a right or wrong set of roles. There's really just the right set of roles that match where you are in terms of your ERG. And think about it, we call ourselves an organization because we're an organism. We evolve over time. So right now, depending on if you're looking at launching, or many of you have 5 or 10 plus chapters, this is a great way for you to look here, which is looking at what type of structure do you need? And I like to use this whole notion of, based on what we're trying to do, what roles do I really need to add? You know, when we looked at making social media a priority, I said, you know what, we really need to add a couple of people with a unique set of expertise. Now, those people weren't all raising their hand. I actually had to go out to some of the LGBT people in our businesses and say, hey, you run social media for the Oxygen Network or for CNBC. We need your help, and we actually brought them into the fold. Then there's times that you have to really look at, based on what your goals are, do you have roles that maybe you can eliminate because they're not as important anymore, and that focus could put somewhere else? In a lot of our chapters, I used to see like we would have like a volunteer chair. Well, the reality is our business has become so sophisticated in terms of corporate social responsibility, our foundations. We do a Comcast Cares Day every single day. Our television stations work in the community and have annual franchises like AIDS walks or other health expos. So we said, well, we don't really need that role anymore because the company is really there. We can ad hoc supply volunteers and help curate that for LGBT. And then you need to look at where are some roles where you really need to edit that. That role kind of exists as something, but maybe we need to tweak that a little bit there, right? And that was a place where we actually saw, focusing on communications, that social media actually is a separate set of expertise from maybe creating glossy newsletters that might go out. So you can spend a little bit of time on your worksheet there, and we're going to jump quickly into processes. And the process piece is really about how do you create great systems and models that allow you to execute on all of that stuff. I'm going to run through some really cool ones that we look at NBC Universal. The great way that I kind of look at our chapters is we use the television and network model. Now, many of you, I know you guys love The Voice and Blind Spot and all of those great shows on NBC, right? But you probably don't realize that our television stations that you see over on the right side of your screen over here, these are all separate P&Ls that operate in New York, LA, Dallas, Chicago, wherever you're calling from. And then right next door to me is really the NBC network that provides entertainment programming and network news that comes to you. We have found this model to be super helpful. So when we look at it at those mega hubs that are trying to serve everyone, we want out to provide this network type of programming. What's the look and feel? What is a shell for initiatives that we all agree on? But then what you see is when they go out, they get to be localized. So Pride Month may be really gigantic in New York and LA because they have so many employees. It might have 5 events. It might include being in a Pride parade. It might include a speaker series. It might include a WebEx event. But when we go out to Dallas-Fort Worth, and by the way, Dallas-Fort Worth as a market celebrates their Pride parade in October when the weather's more convenient, they may only participate in a WebEx event and a localized kickoff event there, but it looks the same and is communicated all the way across the globe in the same way. That's kind of a great way to think about that. And you can see there's no distinguishment to you as a consumer. If you're watching NBC5 in Dallas, you see that peacock and it all works in symphony together. If I look at the next slide, one thing that we've really done is focused on a look and feel in terms of branding. Now, of course, branding is a whole separate thing about, you know, what do you stand for? We've done all that work and happy to share that at another time, but you can even see this great set of, we have banners. Each of our chapters gets banners. They can pop them up at any time. We kind of design and source them so that we get the best cost, and then everyone gets them whenever we do a refresh. It allows them to immediately show up as professional and branded. We have over here these great sets of newsletters that you can work with. So they're templates. So you can see we might send out a template right here promoting a television show on the NBC television network. We're going to shoot that out to all employee resource chapters in the United States, right? So we purposely won't send that out international because it doesn't have a tune-in internationally. But then you can see we also have the same look and feel. So at Telemundo down in Hialeah outside of Miami, they can send out a equally polished event for people to come and have a trans conversation using telepresence at their location. And then we have a whole set of assets. Here's things like buttons that you can use, that you can distribute at a variety of events. And by not making them hyper-local, right, by saying out at NBC Universal, as opposed to it saying out New York or out Singapore, it allows for that product to be purchased in one gigantic group, and we've worked with great vendors that actually split up that order and ship it out to locations in quantities as small as 100 for a small chapter to as big as 10,000 for another. Now, here's just another quick element that we can show you so that we can move on to cross-culture. But this is how we look at programming. So at Universal Pictures, we release upwards of 25 films a year, but not every film can be gigantic, right? We hope it is, but there's no way that it can be. So we create a slate, and this is how we create slates. We have big tent poles like Jurassic World. You get a handful of them a year, big money, cross-promotable. Then you have more event films that you have more of, a little bit lower budget, more star or character-driven, story-driven. Then you have more niche films that we hope have crossover, like I know you guys all love Pitch Perfect and Pitch Perfect 2. And then sometimes as a movie studio, we do rent a system where we don't even make the movie. We just market and sell it for a smaller company. So prior to Marvel being part of Disney, we actually distributed quite a few things, but we had no investment in it. Here's the cool thing. This is how we program at Out. We use the same strategy. We basically say your ERG can't do 1,000 things. So if you do 1 to 3 tentpole, largest budget, broadest audience, needs to touch allies, LGBT, union, non-union, hourly, exempt, the most amount of people that come, and it needs to be in service of other things, that's where we put things. So Pride Month, Spirit Day, big networking events with speaker and charity ties. But then we ask people to do more medium-sized events. It might be the AIDS Walk, off-site volunteerism, executive speakers that don't cost you anything, right? And oftentimes they still have a broad audience, but they're cause, theme, or personality driven. We know people are showing up because they want to hear from that executive about that initiative. Then we do these more niche or crossover ones, right? So those might be, we've had a lot of success doing a women's luncheon annually, a benefit session to help LGBT couples who are participating in married spousal benefits now to come in and ask questions, right? A much more niche element. Even performance review sessions, how to write your performance review. And then this is what I'm a fan of, rent a system. Let other people do the work, but come on board. So for example, we have something like a United Way campaign. Someone in corporate social responsibility does all of the work. What do? We go through, send out an email and say, oh, by the way, make sure to use the function. And here's some of our favorite LGBT and HIV and AIDS service organizations that you can already dedicate your money to through United Way. We do a Comcast Cares Day event, annual day of giving. Many of our chapters actually create a small 25-person project that gets put up on the portal but advertised to everyone. Lots of our nonprofits allow you to do community collaboration there. So just think about what some of those elements are that you could do in terms of creating process, right? What are those things that make it easy and turnkey and a repeatable process for your ERGs to do the great work on their own wherever they are? Now, what that brings us down to is the final one, and we'll wrap up in a few minutes, but this is a great place for conversation, and we'll go into Q&A. This is really where the big pitfall is. You can do all of that stuff, but if you don't address how do we execute in a way that respects and leverages local people and their cultures, it's a failure anytime, whether it's, a site in the US or a brand new site internationally. So we want to just ask you a couple of questions. Go ahead right now and vote for us. Where are your chapters located? Because this is going to help us look at some cross-cultural elements. And if we don't cover all of them, of course, we will be able to give you all of the resources afterwards that you'll get from Daniel. So it looks like most of us are in North America. We've got some in Europe and LATAM coming up, a few in Asia Pacific. So it looks like for the most part, we're in North America, and a few of you are launching internationally. Thanks for that. I'm going to ask you another poll question here. What locations have you found most challenging either to launch in or to keep engaged? This is an area that you would benefit from really thinking through cross-cultural. So you can see that up here. We've got international, rural, urban, headquarters. So it looks like, big challenges, regional offices that are not part of the headquarters sound like a difficulty. Virtual employees, and I saw some on the chat to definitely look at that. So awesome. We also have international, regional, that let's take a look at some things. So I am going to ask you a couple of questions. Let's take right here, we saw regional was the biggest one. So help us out in the chat bar. I'm going to walk you through the tools that Lisa and I have used with our teams. So over here in the chat box, do me a favor, and I want you to ask this question. What is unique about our workforce? So right now, I want you to answer this question if you are thinking about regional affiliates that are not part of your headquarters location. What is unique about that workforce? And just go ahead and throw it into the chat bar there. What's unique about your workforce that's working in a regional location? Okay, I'm seeing stuff. Oh, thank you. We like the bird. Finding grassroots to start in international sites. Okay, we have mostly female leadership, hourly versus salary. What I want you to think about is in that rural location, what is that biggest challenge? So there, thank you, Bill Peters. I see like one of your challenges is out in these regional locations. Most of these folks tend to be more hourly than salaried, right? They might be working in call centers or industrial locations. Let's see what else we said. Midwest, so they oftentimes, our regional affiliates are in places that tend to be more conservative. That's great. Call centers, telecommuters, or commuters where they're spread out. Very cool. Thank you for chatting. Let's take this down again with these regional things. What's unique about these regional work and local cultures? So we saw what was maybe unique, but what's unique about their work and their local culture? Throw some things in. Okay, so here's an interesting thing. Thank you, Fiona. We start thinking maybe unlike your headquarters in New York or Philadelphia or LA, people may be more closeted in a cultural, more closeted in a rural area. Sarah, thank you. Your folks, they're travel, so they're on the road 4 to 5 days per week. So suddenly we start seeing great things that can inform how might I do things. So how can I protect people's anonymity? How can I reach folks that are operating in different types of work hours or on the road? Let's keep going with this because let's do some solutions. So thinking of those regional areas where people might be more in the closet, more on the road, what are some things you need to do to launch locally in those type of regional chapters? Let's just keep this going. I see this located in the Bible Belt, very conservative and vocal employees in that workplace. Okay, so Bill, I'm loving this. Bill just threw out there, we can attend a local pride event. So thinking that people may be more closeted in the workplace, we might think at an ERG chapter here in this region to really hit cross-culture, maybe we need to focus some of our programming to be off-site so that people feel comfortable. Loving this. Jeff King, thank you. Have strong allies to lead the way. So I look at this all of the time. When I look at New York and Los Angeles with my big chapters, like predominantly we have lots of out executives in these areas. We really focus on, preaching to the choir of LGBT folks on our steering committees. When I go out to places like Dallas, Fort Worth, or other smaller locations, we definitely look at, we need to really engage allies to be part of the leadership to do this. Ryan, I'm looking here, low budget. It's hard to have a big impact when you don't have money. So we have to look at how do we create events in a box that might do that. Thank you guys for playing, and let's ask this last question. What do we need to do to re-energize or successfully launch a local chapter in these areas? I gave you some examples, but I want to see some of what's really worked for you guys. Sarah, you gave a great one. A lot of millennials, they aren't defined in a particular way. They look at them as in an intersection. John Curtis is saying exec allies HR are traveling to sites so they say the words, right? So that's a great one, is headquarters employees going out, and when they travel to these smaller sites, they serve as role models and they say LGBT, or we even coach them to say lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and ally when they go out to that sites to really set that. Ryan is saying here, great support from senior leadership and visibility all year, not just during Pride, right? So maybe you launched with Pride, but how do you create a system to support that? And I love this, John, saying individuals using a personal development plan to help them into a leadership role. So we just have a couple more minutes left. I'm going to throw it over to Lisa, who's going to just share a couple of things that have really worked over at Dow. Lisa, are you there?
I am here, yes, thank you. So one of our thrusts here is to really affect the culture of our organizations. And so as you can see, we're outside of Philadelphia, we're in Latin America, but one of the places where we have really made an impact, and for the sake of time, I'm going to skip maybe to the next slide, I believe. There was an event that I wanted to mention that we had in Midland, Michigan. While it might be our corporate headquarters, as I alluded to before, it's not a hotbed of diversity or progressive living. It's the middle of the country. So an event that worked there from a regional location where you are rural, we have a lot of hourly employees. We are pretty much in a Bible Belt type of environment. We had as a corporation and as a network, we co-hosted the first ever LGBT workplace summit in the area. We partnered with a local university, we partnered with local businesses, and really trying to lead by example in the community to really bring this conversation to the surface, bring this to the front, and make LGBT and ally diversity, inclusion, and acceptance in the workplace a priority for people, and to help connect businesses that were like-minded and wanted to pool resources. So it's an example of how on the local level, that was a vacuum that we saw on the local level where we could engage with neighbors to make a difference, not only in our workplace, but in our communities where we serve. We're going to go to the next slide, please. And we also are able to locally implement in terms of equitable policies and practices, again, within those Bible Belt states. We're seeing a lot of legislative action in North America that's really not hospitable to the community. Dow has publicly opposed discriminatory legislation in a host of states and really made a difference in stopping some of the actions that may have taken place on the state level. An area where we've seen tremendous growth in Latin America, our Brazilian chapters are doing targeted hiring events because they recognize while they have a lot of out lesbian and gay and bisexual employees, we really don't have a strong transgender employee presence. And so there's a targeted effort there for trans hiring events and inclusion as an outreach to help really diversify and bolster our workforce. Next slide.
Awesome. So we know we crammed a lot of information in there, but what we highly suggest is we just did it very high level, and thank you guys all for crowdsourcing here, but you can ask yourselves these questions of individual chapters and really work through with local folks as well as your headquarters folks. What are the different elements that you can take everything else, but give it that twist that really makes sense? I'm seeing a lot of great ideas on having executives speak. In my role running the Talent Lab, I show up at businesses all of the time. So there's plenty of times that I'd prefer to go back to my hotel room or go hang out at a restaurant, but I always make time to say, hey, I'm Jason and I'm doing an out event, whether you have a chapter here or not. And I always make it a business topic that people want to show up. In our international locations, we've also even just found launching in Singapore is really partnering with the top Asia Pacific LGBT nonprofit out in Asia has helped lend credence in a country that, from a legal perspective, is ridiculously conservative, like Singapore, but is our Asia Pacific headquarters. So I know we want to take some time for questions. We just have a few more minutes. So let's just go ahead. If you've got questions, you can throw it out on the chat. And I know Daniel's on the line with Lisa and myself. So let's go ahead. What questions do you guys have?
And just as a reminder for Jason and Daniel, I cannot see the chat questions.
And Lisa, so the first question is for you, and it's asking if you could speak about the scope of allies in GLAAD and how that works with your global chapters.
Yes, I think that we do have a targeted percentage that within the network that we strive to have 75%, approximately 75% ally engagement in the network. Part of this is that if we can't get our colleagues comfortable talking about LGBT issues and comfortable supporting our LGBT colleagues, we're not going to move the needle in culture. And the way to really help move that needle is to deepen the understanding for ally colleagues. So it kind of goes back in part two to the roles identification, that we engage internationally and locally. We engage executive leadership, whether you're engaging that leader for a region or whether you're engaging that leader for the site. In a company like ours, it's fairly conservative. I think in contrast to NBC Universal, we don't have a lot of out executives. We have one. These executives who have partnered with our network and who are supporting us, with one or two exceptions, are ally executives. And by presenting them with our business case, by presenting them with our strategic plan, by presenting them with our budgetary requests and requests for help, they are really seeing the value that our network brings, and they are vocally supporting us. They are leading by example and coming to our events. So I think that that's been a real, from the top down and from the bottom up, we strive to have ally engagement to both kind of just lend some support. I mean, when you have a lot of people in the room for an LGBT event, that makes our LGBT colleagues feel all the more validated in a sense, but it also, it's great for our ally colleagues because we hear so many times after an event, I didn't know that. Thank you for explaining it. And we also, I think an important thing about ally engagement, like be gentle with your allies. They don't know what they don't know. They could be awkward. Like, let them make mistakes, make a mistake yourself. Like, be clear, like, thanks for helping, and we get that this isn't necessarily the most comfortable thing. I mean, we've taken managers from the question, do we really have gay people here, to what else can I do for you? So I think that it's really important to engage the allies. We engage them from a leadership perspective, from a funding perspective, but most importantly, we ask them just show up, like be at our events and have your physical presence speak to your support for inclusion in the workplace.
That's great. And we do have a lot of questions, so I want to try to focus on some. We're not going to have time to get to all, but this next one came up several times, and it's asking about virtual ERGs, how you reach your virtual and your mobile workforce for engagement.
Quickly,
hey, Jason. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing that we try to do is if we are having a really high impact, like the tentpole event that Jason mentioned, we do try to offer dial-in and WebEx options for people who can't physically get there, and we try to capture like this in a digital file as much as we can to help with folks being able to dial in at their convenience, whether it's because they're a virtual employee, because they're a closeted employee, because they might be an LGB employee at a shared workstation and not comfortable doing it in the middle of their shift with everyone else around. So we do try to meet people where they are in terms of giving them different dial-in options, and then our communication, just trying to reach people by different, whether we're chatting out, sending an email, Facebook, or a live event.
Thank you. So many great questions. We're not going to have time to get to all of them. We will try to follow up with those individual questions. I want to give the floor to Jason and Lisa if you have any closing comments.
Yeah, hey, it's Jason. I would just close out just on the virtual piece. I think, doing events like this, I try and do 2 or 3 a year that go out globally and bring people in. We do a lot of emphasis on Facebook and Twitter, as well as doing global newsletters. I think the big mindset shift that I try and work with my ERG leaders is an ERG is not an event resource group. So not everything needs to be a live event. A lot of times it's really about communicating and curating the LGBT experience that can be done via newsletter and posts without people actually coming to something in person. Lisa, what are your final thoughts?
I think my final thought that addresses several questions is around programming variety. So whether you are meeting people because of a local custom, politic, or policy, because they are in the region, because they're closeted, technical, white collar, whatever, I would say to try to mix up your programming agendas where they're aligned with your corporate strategy, but based on where you are and what your objective is, you have a variety of offerings for your employees. Because as Jason said, this isn't necessarily about events, it's about people.
Absolutely. Well, Jason and Lisa, we want to thank you so much for your time and participation today. And we also want to thank all of you on the call for your active participation in this session. There will be a follow-up email going out that will include a link to this recording, as well as, once again, the worksheet which was mentioned during the session. Another reminder that our Out and Equal Workplace Summit will be in Orlando, Florida at the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin, October 4th through 7th. So join Out and Equal and over 3,000 LGBT and ally professionals. You can find out more information on our website. There will be a brief survey at the end of the call, and your feedback is important to us, so please take a moment to fill that out. A reminder that our next webinar will be our global town call on Eastern Europe on April 27th, and our town call the day after on April 28th will be on unconscious bias, LGBT perspectives. And you can find out about that, once again, by visiting our website and going to resources and university. One more reminder that the deadline for workshop applications is April 14th for the Out and Equal Workplace Summit. If you have questions about training or want to bring training into your company, you can contact Pat Bailey, Director of Training, or myself, Daniel Lawrence Smith. On behalf of Out and Equal, thank you so much for joining us today.